The wolf came at dawn. Catherine Morrison heard it before she saw it. A low growl that rolled across the frost-covered grass like distant thunder, primal and patient. She stood near the horse corral bucket in one hand, the other resting on the fence rail. Flint, her 10-year-old gelding, had gone rigid. His ears pinned back flat against his skull, nostrils flaring wide. The air smelled of pine and coming snow, clean and sharp enough to sting the lungs. Montana mornings in late autumn carried that particular crispness, the kind that made breath visible and turned fence posts white with ice. The Bitterroot Valley stretched wide around her small ranch mountains, rising like sentinels to the west, their peaks already dusted with early winter. Kate set the bucket down slowly. No sudden movements. The wolf emerged from the tree line 60 yards out, gray and massive, moving with the unhurried confidence of an apex predator. Its shoulder stood level with her waist, maybe higher. Hungry. The drought had driven the deer higher into the mountains, and hunger made animals desperate. Made people desperate, too. The wolf's eyes fixed on Flint. The horse stamped once a sharp crack against frozen ground, then backed against the far rail. Kate's hand moved to her hip fingers, finding the worn leather holster she wore only when working the far pastures. The revolvers sat heavy, their cold metal that seemed to burn through the fabric of her skirt. Her breath caught. Not from fear of the wolf, from something older. She drew the gun. Her hand shook violently. The barrel wavered in the morning light, catching and losing the sun in erratic flashes. Kate steadied her wrist with her other hand, but that trembled too. The wolf padded closer, lowering its head muscles, bunching beneath its thick coat. 30 yards now. Kate's finger found the trigger, squeezed. The hammer clicked, safety still engaged. She fumbled with it, thumb slipping twice before it released. The wolf lunged forward in a sudden burst of speed. Flint screamed a sound horses make when they know death is close. 20 yards. Kate raised the gun again, sighted down the barrel. The wolf filled her vision, all teeth and hunger and inevitability. She pulled the trigger. The shot went wide. The bullet kicked up dirt 3 feet to the left of the animal. The report cracked across the valley, echoing off distant peaks. The wolf didn't slow. Kate fired again. This time, the round struck earth even farther off target, her shaking hands pulling the barrel in wild arcs. 10 yards, the wolf launched itself at Flint. Kate screamed a raw sound torn from somewhere deep. She fired a third time, not aiming now, just pulling the trigger in desperate hope. The bullet caught the wolf mid-leap, punching through its shoulder. The animal twisted in the air, hit the ground hard, rolled once. It tried to stand front leg, buckling blood darkening the frost beneath it. Kate fired again. This shot found its mark and the wolf went still. The silence that followed felt heavier than the gunshots. Kate stood frozen, arm extended, smoke curling from the barrel. Her whole body shook now, not just her hands. Her stomach heaved. She vomited into the grass, retching until nothing remained but bile and trembling. When the spasms passed, she stayed there on her hands and knees, staring at frost crystals catching morning light. 16 years. Years since she'd last fired at a living thing, and her body still rebelled against it. Still remembered what came after. Kate pushed herself upright slowly. Flint had calmed, though his sides still heaved with rapid breaths. She walked to the wolf's body on unsteady legs, stood looking down at it. A beautiful animal, starving. She could count its ribs beneath the thick coat. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The words came automatic, habitual. She'd been apologizing to the dead for so long it had become reflex. "I'm sorry." She retrieved the gun, holstered it with hands that still wouldn't steady, walked to Flint and pressed her forehead against his neck, breathing in the warm, hoarse smell of him. He was the only living thing she allowed herself to touch anymore. The only thing that couldn't ask questions she had no right to answer. 16 years, she said again, this time to the horse. Still can't do it without shaking. Flint turned his head, pressed his muzzle against her shoulder. Comfort without judgment. Kate closed her eyes and let herself take it, just for a moment. Just until the shaking stopped. The sun climbed higher. The day waited. And Catherine Morrison, who had once been someone else, entirely picked up her bucket and went back to the work of pretending yesterday didn't exist. The ranch house stood small and weathered against the vast Montana sky, wood-grayed by years of wind and sun. Kate had bought it 6 years ago with money saved from a life she'd spent decades trying to forget. 2 rooms, a narrow hall, a roof that leaked in only one corner. Enough. More than enough for someone who didn't deserve comfort. She moved through the morning chores with mechanical precision. Fed Flint checked the fence lines, hauled water from the creek that gave her land its name. Blood Creek, though the water ran clear enough now. The name came from older days, from conflicts between settlers and Lakota that had painted these valleys red a generation past. Kate tried not to think about blood. Didn't always succeed. By mid-morning, the sun had burned off the frost, leaving the grass damp and gleaming. She stood in the doorway of her small barn looking out across her property. 40 acres. Not much by Montana standards, but hers. Paid for. Legal. A place where she could wake each day and remember, with carefully cultivated precision, every reason she didn't deserve to be waking at all. Inside the house, the main room held only necessities. A table, 2 chairs, though she never had visitors. A wood stove for cooking and heat. Shelves with tin cups and plates, flour and beans, the plain staples of solitary living. No photographs on the walls, no mirrors either, not after the first year. She'd learned she couldn't meet her own eyes without seeing other faces reflected there. The only decoration, if it could be called that, sat on the narrow mantel above the stove. A small silver locket, tarnished now, resting on a square of faded blue cloth. Kate approached it the way some people approached altars. Reverently. Fearfully. She didn't open it. Never opened it any more. Hadn't for 3 years, but she knew what lay inside. 2 photographs, fragile with age. A young man with kind eyes and an easy smile. A girl 14 years old, too thin and too scared, captured by a photographer's plate at Fort Ellis in the summer of 1877. Samuel, Alice, the only 2 people she'd ever loved. One dead because of her choices. One alive for the same reason. Kate didn't know which debt weighed heavier. She turned away from the locket, crossed to the window. Her reflection, ghosted in the glass, translucent and incomplete. 36 years old, though she felt centuries older. Hair still dark, but showing silver at the temples. Lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. Before the canyon, before the choice, before Catherine Merrick died, and Kate Morrison crawled out of her grave. A sound pulled her attention outward. Hoofbeats on the road coming slow. Kate's hand moved instinctively toward her hip, but she wore no gun inside the house. She kept it in the barn, locked in a trunk beneath old tack and spare rope, far enough away that she'd have to think before reaching it. Think and hopefully decide against. The rider appeared at the bend in the road. Young, no more than 15, slouched in the saddle like he'd been riding all night. His horse looked worse, head low, sides streaked with dried sweat. Kate recognized neither horse nor rider, which meant they'd come from beyond the valley. Strangers were rare here. Strangers meant questions. Questions meant lies, and Kate had grown weary of lying. But she stepped onto the porch anyway, hands hanging loose at her sides, face composed into the careful neutrality she'd perfected over 6 years of keeping people at arm's length. The boy rode straight for her fence, stopping just beyond it. Up close, his gaunt frame and hollow cheeks made him look younger, but the desperate determination in his eyes belonged to someone who'd already learned how cruel the world could be. "Ma'am," he said. His voice cracked on the word. "I'm looking for work, any kind. I can mend fence-chop wood muck stalls, anything you need." Kate studied him. The boy studied his saddle horn, unable or unwilling to meet her gaze. Pride and desperation warred in the set of his shoulders. "I don't need help," she said, not unkindly, but firm. "Please, ma'am." Now he did look up. "My pa died, mining accident over in Garnet. Ma's got 3 little ones, and winter's coming. I can work hard. I don't eat much." Something in Kate's chest tightened. She recognized that particular flavor of desperation, the kind that came from watching people you loved slip toward disaster while you stood helpless. The kind that made you willing to do anything, sacrifice anyone, if it meant keeping them safe. She should say no. Knew she should. Letting people close meant risk, meant attachment, meant the possibility of having to choose again. But the boy's eyes reminded her of another child, another desperate plea, and Kate had never been good at saying no when it mattered. "What's your name?" she asked. "Ethan Caldwell, ma'am." "You can put your horse in the corral, Ethan. There's oats in the barn. After that there's a woodpile that needs splitting and a fence line on the north pasture that could use checking." The boy's face transformed hope, lighting it from within. "Thank you, ma'am. I won't let you down. I pay $2 a week and 1 meal a day. You sleep in the barn loft. No drinking, no stealing. You break my trust, you're gone. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am, understood." Kate watched him dismount and lead his horse toward the corral. Flint nickered a greeting, and the boy's horse answered a weary sound. Ethan moved with the careful efficiency of someone used to hard work, unsaddling, quickly rubbing down the animal before seeing to his own comfort. Good hands, Kate thought. Samuel had always said you could tell a person's character by how they treated animals. Samuel had been right about most things. Right about her, too, though he'd learned that truth too late. She went back inside, leaving the door open so she could hear if the boy needed anything. Prepared the noon meal, simple fare of beans and cornbread coffee strong enough to strip paint. When Ethan came to the porch, hat in hands, she handed him a plate and a cup. "Eat on the porch," she said. "I'll take mine inside." Hurt flickered across his face, quickly suppressed. Kate pretended not to see. Better, he learned now, that proximity to her brought nothing good. Better for everyone, if distance was maintained. She ate standing at the window, watching him through the glass. He devoured the food with the intensity of real hunger, sopping up every drop of bean liquor, with the cornbread draining the coffee despite its tar-like strength. When he finished, he washed his plate and cup at the pump, dried them carefully, left them on the porch rail before heading back to work. A polite boy. A good boy. The kind who didn't deserve whatever darkness Kate would inevitably bring into his life. But she didn't send him away. Couldn't. Just like she couldn't send away the memories, the guilt, the ghosts that walked her property after dark and whispered their accusations with voices that sounded like wind through grass. The afternoon lengthened. Kate worked inside, mending clothes that didn't need mending, organizing shelves already organized. Anything to avoid going outside, avoid conversation, avoid the human connection she both craved and feared with equal intensity. When the sun touched the peaks to the west, painting the valley gold and crimson, she stepped onto the porch. Ethan had split enough wood to last through next spring, stacked it with careful precision against the barn wall. She found him checking the north fence, resetting a post that had worked loose in the summer drought. "That's enough for today," she called. He straightened, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Yes, ma'am. Same time tomorrow. If you want." "I want." He smiled, a genuine expression that made him look even younger. "Thank you, Mrs. Morrison. This means a lot." Kate nodded, not trusting her voice, watched him ride away as dusk gathered in the valley hollows. When he disappeared around the bend, she went to the trunk in the barn, opened it. The gun lay on top, still loaded from this morning. She should clean it. Should check the mechanism, oil the cylinder. Instead, she closed the trunk, locked it, walked to the edge of her property where the land dropped away toward Blood Creek, now running low between its banks. Stood there until full dark, until the temperature dropped and her breath misted white. The stars emerged bright and indifferent. Somewhere up there, if the preachers were right, Samuel was watching, along with 11 other men whose names she whispered each night like a rosary of the damned. Thomas Brennan, Marcus Cole, Daniel Frost, names carved into her memory deeper than any headstone could hold. "I'm sorry," she told them. Told him, "I'm still so sorry." The creek answered with its endless murmur. The wind carried the smell of coming snow. And Kate went back to her empty house, to another night of not sleeping, of lying awake, and counting the ways she'd failed everyone who'd ever trusted her. Tomorrow would bring more of the same, work and silence and careful isolation. The life she'd chosen, the life she deserved. She didn't know that tomorrow would bring something else entirely. That the past which she'd spent 16 years trying to bury was already riding toward her valley with vengeance in its heart and her name on its lips. 3 days passed in the rhythm Kate had established. Work, silence, the careful maintenance of distance. Ethan proved capable beyond his years, tackling each task with quiet determination. He didn't ask questions, didn't try to make conversation beyond what necessity required. Kate appreciated that more than she could express. On the fourth day, the stranger came to town. Kate heard about it at the general store, where she went once a week for supplies she couldn't grow or make herself. The building, hunched on Bitterroot Falls, Main Street, one of maybe a dozen structures that comprised the town. Small, isolated, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone's business, or thought they did. Mary Hutchins stood behind the counter, gray hair pulled back, severe eyes, sharp with the particular intelligence of someone who trafficked in gossip as much as goods. She was measuring flour when Kate entered, but her hands stilled as the door closed. "Mrs. Morrison," she said, not unfriendly but cautious. The whole town had learned caution around Kate over the years. She never explained why she'd come, never shared her past, never opened herself to the community. Polite, yes. Friendly, never. "Mrs. Hutchins." Kate moved through the store gathering her needs. Coffee, sugar, lamp oil, the essentials that marked the passage of solitary weeks. "Heard you took on that Caldwell boy," Mary said. "Good of you. His mother's in a bad way since the accident." Kate nodded, not elaborating, placed her items on the counter. "Big doings today." Mary continued, her voice taking on the animation of fresh news. "Investor from Denver came in this morning, bought up the old Halverson mining claim up Blood Creek Way." Kate's hand stilled on a sack of flour. "Mining claim. Gold, they say. Halverson never found much, but this Denver fellow Mr. Hawthorne seems to think there's real money in those hills. Brought 6 men with him, engineers and such." Mayor Drummond's beside himself, talking about jobs and prosperity. The name struck Kate like a physical blow. Hawthorne. Samuel's mother's maiden name. But it couldn't be. Samuel was dead. 16 years dead, killed in a canyon 200 miles north of here, along with 11 other good men, killed because of her. "This Hawthorne," Kate said, keeping her voice level through force of will. "Did you see him?" "Not up close. He's staying at the hotel, keeping to himself mostly, but I heard he's a handsome man, well-dressed, has that Eastern polish, you know, money and manners." Kate paid for her purchases, hands steady through sheer discipline. Outside, she loaded the supplies into her saddlebags with mechanical precision, mounted Flint, rode toward home at a pace just shy of flight. It couldn't be Samuel. Samuel was dead. She'd mourned him for 16 years, carried his memory like a stone in her chest. The Lakota had killed him along with the others after she ran, after she chose Alice over duty love, over honor, one life over 11. But Hawthorne, that name, that particular ghost. She was still wrestling with it when she reached the ranch and found Ethan waiting on the porch face, pale eyes wide. "Mrs. Morrison," he said, "there's someone here to see you." Kate's hand went to her hip, found no gun. She'd left it locked in the barn as always. "Who says his name is Mr. Hawthorne, from Denver. He's waiting by the corral." The world tilted. Kate gripped the saddle horn to steady herself. "How long has he been here?" "Maybe 10 minutes. He asked if you were home." "I said you'd gone to town but would be back soon. Was that wrong?" "No." Kate dismounted, legs unsteady. "Go inside, Ethan. Stay there until I call you." The boy hesitated, clearly, curious, but obeyed. Kate watched him disappear into the house before turning toward the corral. Her heart hammered against her ribs, each beat a question she was terrified to answer. A man stood by the fence back to her, one hand resting on the top rail, tall, broad-shouldered. Dark coat of fine wool hat, expensive and new. He turned at the sound of her approach. Not Samuel. Relief and disappointment crashed through Kate in equal measure. This man was older, maybe 40, with silver threading his dark hair. Handsome in a severe way, with a face carved by experience into hard lines. But it was the eyes that caught her. One brown, warm, and alive. The other milky white, dead in its socket, a scar running from eyebrow to cheekbone. Samuel's eyes had both been brown, both been whole. "Mrs. Morrison," the man said. His voice carried cultured tones, education, and money. "Thank you for seeing me." "I don't recall agreeing to see you, Mr. Hawthorne." A slight smile. "Fair point. I apologize for the intrusion. I'm Samuel Hawthorne, recently of Denver, now operating a mining concern in your valley." "Samuel." The name hit like a fist. Kate forced herself to breathe normally to keep her face neutral. Coincidence, just coincidence. Hawthorne wasn't an uncommon name. "What can I do for you, Mr. Hawthorne?" Actually, it's what I hope to do for you. My operation requires significant water. Blood Creek runs through your property before reaching the mining claim. I'd like to purchase water rights from you. The creek isn't for sale. I'm prepared to be generous. $5,000 for perpetual water rights. The sum made Kate blink. More money than her ranch was worth twice over. More money than she'd see in 10 years of careful living. That's very generous. The answer is still no. Hawthorne's expression didn't change, but something shifted in that good eye. Assessment, calculation. May I ask why that's a substantial sum for what amounts to letting water flow where it already flows? My reasons are my own. Of course. He straightened, adjusting his hat. Forgive my directness, Mrs. Morrison, but I've made some inquiries about you. You've lived here 6 years. Bought this property from the previous owner's widow after his untimely death. You keep to yourself, don't socialize. Refuse all offers of neighborly assistance. Some find that curious. A warning threaded through his polite words. Kate heard it clearly. Curious isn't illegal, Mr. Hawthorne. No, but it does make one wonder what a woman might be hiding out here in the wilderness, what past she might be running from. The threat crystallized naked now. Kate met his gaze without flinching. I'm not running from anything. I simply value privacy. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. She turned to leave. His voice stopped her. Mrs. Morrison, or should I say Mrs. Grave, I understand that was the previous owner's name. Daniel Grave. Died in a tragic fall, they say. You married him just 6 months before his accident. Some might call that convenient. Kate's blood went cold. She turned back slowly. What exactly are you suggesting, mister? Hawthorne, I'm not suggesting anything, merely noting facts. You arrived in Bitterroot Falls in the autumn of 1877. A woman alone, which was unusual. You married Daniel Grave within months. He died shortly after. You inherited this property. All very neat, very fortunate. If you're accusing me of something, speak plainly. I'm simply a curious man, Mrs. Morrison. I find it interesting that you appeared here the same year that Catherine Merrick disappeared from Army records. A scout at Fort Ellis who survived when her entire unit was massacred by Lakota warriors up in Black Paw Canyon, the only survivor. Some said she was a hero. Others said she was a coward who ran while good men died. The canyon's name on his lips sucked the air from Kate's lungs. She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only stare at this stranger who somehow knew the truth she'd spent 16 years burying. Hawthorne smiled. It didn't reach his dead eye. I'll leave you to your work, Mrs. Morrison, but I'll be in touch. I always get what I come for one way or another, the water rights or the truth. Your choice which you'd prefer to sell. He walked to his horse, mounted with practiced ease, tipped his hat with mocking courtesy. Good day, ma'am. Give my regards to young Ethan. Seems like a good boy. Be a shame if his mother lost her only wage earner. The threat hung in the air like smoke as he rode away. Kate stood frozen until the sound of hoofbeats faded. Then her legs gave out, and she sat down hard in the dirt, back against the fence post, breath coming in short gasps. He knew. Somehow this stranger knew who she really was, what she'd done, and he was going to use that knowledge to destroy her, to take everything she'd built from the ashes of her old life, unless she gave him what he wanted first. Kate pressed her forehead against her knees. Flint approached, nuzzled her shoulder with velvet softness. She reached up, tangled her fingers in his mane, and let herself shake. Inside the house, Ethan watched through the window, watched this strong, silent woman who'd given him work and dignity crumble like she'd been shot, and wondered what terrible secret could reduce a person to such visible anguish. That night, Kate couldn't sleep. She lay in her narrow bed, staring at ceiling beams, barely visible in the darkness, mind racing through possibilities and finding no good answers. Samuel Hawthorne knew her secret, how she couldn't fathom. The Army had listed her as killed in action after Black Paw Canyon presumed dead along with the others. She'd taken Daniel Grave's name in marriage specifically to disappear to become someone else. When he'd died in that unfortunate accident, she'd mourned genuinely. He'd been kind, asked no questions, given her shelter when she needed it most. His death had been an accident, a fall from a cliff while checking on cattle. Tragic, but not uncommon in Montana's rough country. Hadn't it doubt crept in like frost? Daniel had been an experienced rancher, sure-footed and careful. The cliff wasn't particularly treacherous. The sheriff had ruled it accidental death without much investigation. Kate sat up, swung her legs over the side of the bed. Sleep was pointless tonight. She dressed in the dark, pulled on her coat, and slipped outside. The night air bit cold stars. Brilliant overhead, no moon. Good. She needed darkness for what came next. The barn loomed black against blacker sky. Kate knew every inch of it by touch and memory. Found the trunk without lighting a lamp, knelt before it. The lock clicked open. Inside, beneath the gun she couldn't bring herself to use, lay other remnants of her previous life. The uniform. Worn blue wool sergeant stripes still attached. Her name had been stitched there once. Catherine Merrick. She'd cut it away 6 years ago, burned the threads to ash. The diary sat beneath the uniform leather cover, soft with age and handling. She hadn't opened it in years, didn't want to now, but she did anyway. The first entry dated to her enlistment in 1875. Young, idealistic, desperate to prove herself in a man's world. The army had been her escape from a childhood of poverty, from watching her mother die slowly of consumption while their father drank himself into graves. Alice had been only 12 then, too young to enlist, so Kate had left her at Fort Ellis with the chaplain's wife. Promised she'd come back for her. Promised they'd have a better life. Some promises got kept. Others got paid for in blood. Kate flipped through pages. Training, deployments, learning the land, the languages, the skills that made her valuable as a scout. Meeting Samuel, falling for him with the intensity only first love allows. His proposal, her joy, then the final entries. May 1877, the mission to Black Paw Canyon. 12 soldiers sent to investigate reports of Lakota movement. Kate as their scout, Samuel as their lieutenant. The ambush. She couldn't read those pages, never could. The words blurred through tears. She hadn't allowed herself to cry in 6 years. She slammed the diary shut, pressed it against her chest, and let the grief come. They'd trusted her, all of them, trusted her to lead them safely to see danger before it saw them. She'd failed, not from incompetence, from fear, from love, from the impossible choice the Lakota chief had offered. Your sister for your unit, 1 life for 12. Choose. She'd chosen. God help her, she'd chosen Alice. And Samuel had died believing she was a coward who ran to save herself, never knowing the truth. Never knowing Kate had traded his life for her sister's, had made the calculation that a 14-year-old girl mattered more than 11 grown men. Had she been right, wrong, Kate didn't know. Years of self-punishment hadn't brought clarity, only exhaustion. A sound jerked her from spiraling thoughts. Footsteps, light trying for stealth. Kate shoved the diary back into the trunk, closed it quietly, pressed herself into the shadows. The barn door creaked open. A figure slipped inside, small and slight. Ethan. The boy moved through the darkness with surprising ease, heading straight for the ladder to the loft where he slept. But he paused near the trunk so close Kate could have reached out and touched him. He stood there silent, just breathing. Then he climbed to the loft. Kate waited 5 long minutes before easing out of her hiding spot, closed the trunk, locked it, left the barn on silent feet. Back in her bed, she lay awake until gray dawn crept through the window, wondering how much the boy had seen, wondering how much he'd guessed. The next day brought more visitors. Kate was repairing a section of fence when she heard horses approaching. Multiple horses. She straightened, shaded her eyes against the midday sun. 5 riders. Samuel Hawthorne in the lead, flanked by 4 men who had the look of hired help. One of them caught Kate's attention immediately. Younger than the others, maybe 34, with a weathered face and eyes that seemed familiar somehow. He rode with military bearing, spine-straight hands light on the reins. They stopped at her fence. Hawthorne dismounted. The others stayed mounted, a subtle intimidation Kate recognized immediately. "Mrs. Morrison," Hawthorne said, "I've brought someone I think you should meet. This is Jacob Brennan, my foreman." The younger man dismounted, removed his hat. "Ma'am?" Brennan. The name tickled Kate's memory. Where had she heard it? Then ice flooded her veins. Thomas Brennan, private, aged 20. Died Black Paw Canyon, May 1877. She stared at Jacob Brennan, seeing the resemblance now. The same strong jaw, same clear eyes. Thomas's brother had to be. "Mr. Brennan," she managed. "Jacob, please." His voice was polite, warm even, no recognition in his eyes. "Mr. Hawthorne tells me you're reluctant to sell water rights. I wanted to assure you personally that we'll take every precaution to ensure the creek isn't damaged. We only need to draw water during dry periods. Your own use wouldn't be affected." "The answer is still no," Kate said, though her voice came out less firm than intended. Thomas's brother, standing 3 feet away, smiling at her, unaware she was the reason his brother was dead. Hawthorne stepped closer. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm trying to be reasonable, but my investors expect results. If we can't reach an agreement, I'll have to explore other options. Legal challenges to your water rights, surveys that might discover the creek's path crosses disputed territory. These things can get complicated. Expensive." "Are you threatening me, Mr. Hawthorne? I'm explaining reality. You're one woman alone on a marginal ranch. I represent significant capital and political connections. Who do you think the courts will favor?" Jacob frowned. "Mr. Hawthorne, I don't think—" "You're not paid to think, Mr. Brennan. You're paid to get results." Hawthorne's voice hardened. "Mrs. Morrison, you have 1 week to reconsider. After that, I can't guarantee your situation won't become significantly more difficult." He mounted, gestured for the others to follow. Jacob hesitated, opened his mouth as if to say something, then apparently thought better of it, tipped his hat to Kate. "Ma'am, I'm sorry about this." They rode away. Kate stood gripping the fence post hard enough to send splinters into her palm. Didn't feel them. All she could see was Thomas Brennan's face in her memory, young, eager kind. The way he'd smiled when she'd shown him how to read track. The way he'd talked about his family back in Ohio. The brother he hoped to bring west once he'd saved enough money. The brother now working for the man trying to destroy her. God had a sick sense of humor. Ethan appeared from the barn carrying tools. He'd clearly watched the whole exchange. "Mrs. Morrison, you all right?" "Fine," she lied. "Just businessmen being businessmen." But she wasn't fine. Wouldn't be fine. Because Samuel Hawthorne, whoever he really was, had just shown her exactly how much he knew and how far he'd go. And Kate was out of places to run. That evening, as purple dusk settled over the valley, Ethan knocked on her door. Kate answered to find him holding a plate of food. "Made extra beans," he said. "Thought you might not have eaten." He was right. She hadn't. "Thank you, Ethan. You can leave it on the porch." "Ma'am, can I ask you something?" Every instinct screamed no. But the boy's face held such open concern that Kate found herself nodding. "Those men today, the ones threatening you, is it because of something you did or something they think you did?" Kate took the plate, set it on the rail. "Why do you ask?" "Because you don't seem like a bad person. Quiet, yeah. Private, but not bad. And I figure people who are loud about demanding things are usually the ones in the wrong." Simple wisdom from a young heart. Kate felt something crack inside her chest. "Ethan, some choices don't have right answers, only bad ones and worse ones. Sometimes we pick the bad one and spend the rest of our lives wishing we'd chosen different. But if there weren't no good choices, how can anyone blame you? Because the people who died don't get to choose anything ever again. The least we can do is carry their judgment." Ethan frowned, working through that. "That seems lonely." "It is." Kate met his eyes. "It's supposed to be." She went inside before he could press further, ate the beans cold, barely tasting them. When she looked out the window, Ethan had gone back to the barn. Good. The boy was getting too close, seeing too much. She'd have to let him go soon, before Hawthorne used him as leverage, before her past swallowed him whole, the way it swallowed everything she touched. Kate pulled the locket from the mantel. This time, she opened it. Samuel's face looked back at her, frozen at 24, forever young and hopeful. She traced his features with one finger. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry I chose her over you. I'm sorry you died hating me. I'm sorry I survived." The locket's other photo showed Alice at 14, scared but alive. That girl was 30 now. Married, Kate had heard through careful inquiries, living in Helena with children of her own. Happy. 11 men had died for that happiness. Sometimes Kate thought it was worth it. Sometimes she knew it wasn't. Most times she just endured, suspended between certainty and doubt, punishment and reprieve. She closed the locket, Tomorrow she'd figure out what to do about Samuel Hawthorne and his threats. Tonight she'd sit with her ghosts and count the ways she'd failed them. The diary waited in the barn, locked away, but never forgotten. Its pages held the truth, the choice, the moment everything changed. And Kate had a terrible feeling that very soon someone else was going to read those pages. Someone who wouldn't understand, wouldn't forgive. Someone like Ethan Caldwell, who even now was climbing to the loft with a lockpick fashioned from bent wire and the burning curiosity of youth. The trunk wouldn't stay locked forever. And when it opened, when the truth spilled out into Montana starlight, Kate knew her careful exile would end. The only question was how much blood it would cost this time. Ethan waited until full dark, until the house windows went black and silence settled over the ranch like a held breath. He'd spent 3 days working up the courage for this, 3 days watching Mrs. Morrison carry her secrets like stones, 3 days knowing something was terribly wrong. The barn smelled of hay and horse, familiar and comforting. Flint stirred in his stall but didn't whinny. The gelding knew Ethan by now, accepted his presence. Good. Ethan needed quiet for what came next. The trunk sat in the corner beneath old tack and coiled rope, same as it had been that first night when he'd seen Mrs. Morrison kneeling before it in the dark. She'd been crying. Ethan had never seen a grown woman cry before, not like that. Silent sobs that shook her whole frame. He'd pretended to be asleep when she left, but curiosity had taken root. The lock was simple, designed more for privacy than security. The wire pick Ethan had fashioned slipped into the mechanism easily. He'd learned this trick from his father, who'd been a locksmith before the mines claimed him. Pa had always said an honest man should know how locks worked, so he'd know when dishonest men tried to break them. Pa probably wouldn't approve of this. But Pa was dead and Ma was hungry, and Mrs. Morrison's secrets were interfering with the only paying work Ethan had. The lock clicked. Ethan lifted the lid slowly, mindful of creaking hinges. Inside, layers of history waited. The gun on top he'd expected. Mrs. Morrison wore one when working the far pastures. But beneath it, wrapped in oilcloth, lay a uniform. Army blue. Women's cut, though Ethan had never seen such a thing. He lifted it carefully. Sergeant's stripes on the sleeve. Name patch cutaway thread still visible where it had been removed. Why would someone cut their own name from a uniform unless it wasn't a name they wanted remembered? Beneath the uniform, a diary. Leather-bound, cracked with age. Ethan hesitated. Reading someone's private thoughts felt different than picking a lock. More intimate, more violating. But Mrs. Morrison's pain had been real. And those men today, the threats they'd made, the way she'd gone pale when they mentioned legal trouble. Something was happening. Something bad. Ethan opened the diary. The first entry was dated March 15, 1875. Fort Ellis, Montana Territory. The handwriting was neat, feminine, full of hope. Today, I took the oath. Mama would be proud, I think, or maybe horrified. But I'm finally going to make something of myself, going to prove that being born poor and female doesn't mean you're worthless. Alice cried when I left. I promised her I'd come back, promised we'd have a real home someday. I'll keep that promise, I have to. Ethan flipped pages. Training. Assignments. Descriptions of Montana wilderness so vivid he could see them. Then a new name appeared. Met someone today, Lieutenant Samuel Merrick. He doesn't treat me like I'm less than because I'm a woman. Doesn't look at me like the other officers do. He looks at me like I'm a soldier, like I'm worth something. I think I could fall in love with a man like that. I think maybe I already am. More entries. A romance blooming between lines of military duty. Proposal. Joy. Then May 1877, and the tone changed. We're being sent to Blackpaw Canyon. Reports of Lakota movement. 12 of us. Samuel's leading. I'm scouting. Should be routine, but something feels wrong. Can't explain it, just a feeling. I wish Alice were here. I'd hold her and tell her I love her, just in case. The next entries were sparse. Technical notes about terrain weather track, then nothing for 3 days. Then one final entry dated May 22, 1877. The handwriting, shaky words smeared as if the writer had been crying. They're all dead. Samuel, Thomas, Marcus, all of them. I ran. I chose Alice. God forgive me, I chose Alice, and they died. The Lakota chief gave me a choice. They had her. I don't know how. She was supposed to be safe at the fort, but they had her, and he said, trade. Your sister for your unit. 1 for 12. I chose. I ran to get help, but by the time I got back, they were dead. All of them. Samuel died thinking I was a coward. He died not knowing why. Died hating me. I can't go back. Can't face what I did. Catherine Merrick died in that canyon. I don't know who I am now. I don't deserve to be anyone. Ethan's hands shook. He read the entry again, then again. The pieces falling into place with horrifying clarity. Mrs. Morrison was Catherine Merrick, Army scout, survivor of Black Paw Canyon Massacre, the only one who lived because she'd traded her unit's lives for her sister's. No wonder she'd come here. No wonder she kept to herself. No wonder she couldn't hold a gun steady. She was carrying 16 years of survivor's guilt. 16 years of knowing she'd chosen one life over 12. Ethan closed the diary carefully, put everything back exactly as he'd found it, locked the trunk, climbed to his loft, and lay in the darkness staring at rough-hewn beams. What should he do with this knowledge? Tell Mrs. Morrison he knew, keep silent. Confront those men who were threatening her. Sleep evaded him. Questions chased questions through his mind. But one thing crystallized with absolute certainty. Whatever Mrs. Morrison had done, whoever she'd been, she'd suffered enough. Those men today, especially Hawthorne, with his threats and insinuations, they were predators circling wounded prey. Ethan wouldn't let them tear her apart. He'd lost his father already. Couldn't lose the one person who'd shown him kindness when he needed it most. Even if she was haunted, even if she was guilty, even if she was broken. Maybe especially then. Outside, the Montana night held its breath. Blood Creek whispered over stones, carrying 16 years of secrets toward an ocean that would never remember them. And in the main house, Kate Morrison lay awake, too, counting the hours until her carefully constructed exile crumbled to dust, not knowing that the crumbling had already begun. Morning came cold and unwelcome. Kate woke to frost patterns on her window and the certainty that today would shatter what remained of her carefully maintained isolation. She'd felt it building the way animals sense storms hours before the first cloud appears. She dressed in the pre-dawn darkness, moved through her routine with mechanical precision. Coffee, chores, the familiar rhythm that kept chaos at bay. But when she stepped onto the porch, Ethan was already there, sitting on the top step with her diary in his hands. The world stopped. Kate's breath caught in her throat. The boy looked up, face pale in the gray light eyes, red-rimmed like he'd been crying, or hadn't slept. Probably both. "You read it," she said. Not a question. The diary lay open across his knees, pages exposed to morning air like wounds. "Yes, ma'am." His voice came small, ashamed. "I'm sorry, I picked the lock. I shouldn't have, but I did, and I read it." Kate descended the steps slowly, sat beside him, leaving space between them. Her hands wanted to shake, but she willed them still. "What do you want, Ethan? Money to keep quiet? I don't have much, but what I have is yours if that's the price of silence." The boy's head snapped up. "What? No, Mrs. Morrison? I don't want money. I needed to understand. Those men yesterday, the way they were threatening you. I thought maybe if I knew what they knew, I could help." "Help?" Kate almost laughed. The word felt foreign, impossible. "There's no helping me, Ethan. What I did can't be undone, can't be forgiven. You saved your sister. I killed 11 men. You chose between bad and worse, like you said. That's different than murder." Kate turned to look at him properly. This boy, barely 15, trying to absolve her of sins that had crushed her for 16 years. "You don't understand what you're saying." "Maybe not, but I understand what I see." Ethan closed the diary, gently handled it like something sacred. "I see a woman who's been punishing herself every day for half her life, who lives alone because she thinks she doesn't deserve company, who shakes when she holds a gun because she remembers what guns do. That's not a murderer, Mrs. Morrison. That's someone who cares too much, not too little." The words hit harder than accusations would have. Kate felt something crack inside her chest, the careful armor she'd built against kindness and understanding. "What do you want from me, Ethan?" "Nothing. I just wanted you to know that I know and I'm not leaving. Whatever those men are planning, you don't have to face it alone." Yes, I do. Kate stood, took the diary from his hands. This is my burden, mine alone. And now that you know the truth, you need to go, today. I'll pay you for the week, but you can't stay here. It's not safe. Safe from what? From me, from my past, from the consequences that are coming whether I want them or not. She moved toward the house, paused at the door. Pack your things. I'll have your wages ready within the hour. She went inside before he could argue, closed the door, leaned against it with the diary pressed to her chest, and eyes burning with tears she refused to shed. Outside, Ethan sat on the steps for a long moment. Then he stood, walked to the barn, and began his morning chores. He wasn't leaving. She could order him gone 100 times, and he still wouldn't leave. Some things mattered more than obedience. His pa had taught him that too. The summons came at noon. Mayor Drummond himself wrote out an unprecedented visit that set Kate's nerves jangling. The mayor was a practical man, focused on town prosperity above all else. His presence at her isolated ranch meant trouble of an official nature. Mrs. Morrison, he said, dismounting with the stiffness of a man unused to long rides. I apologize for the intrusion, but there's a town meeting this evening, 7 o'clock at the hall. Your presence is requested. Requested or required? Drummond had the grace to look uncomfortable. Mr. Hawthorne has made certain allegations about water rights, but also about you personally. I think it would be in your best interest to attend and address them directly. Kate's stomach dropped. What kind of allegations? He claims you've been living under a false identity, that you have no legal right to this property because you obtained it through fraudulent means. Drummond cleared his throat. He's also been asking questions about Daniel Graves' death, suggesting it wasn't as accidental as the inquest concluded. The walls were closing in. Kate had known they would eventually, but the speed shocked her. Hawthorne had spent barely a week in Bitterroot Falls, and already he'd poisoned the well, turned her neighbors against her. I'll be there, she said. Drummond nodded, relieved. Good. I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding, but with the mining operation bringing jobs and money, people are listening to Hawthorne. Best to clear the air before rumors take root. Too late for that. Rumors were already growing, fed by 16 years of her own isolation, her refusal to integrate, to explain, to be anything other than a mystery at the valley's edge. After Drummond left, Kate stood in her yard and looked at the land she'd come to think of as home. 40 acres of Montana wilderness. Not much, but hers. Or so she'd thought. If Hawthorne proved she'd married Daniel Grave under a false name, he could challenge the inheritance. Could claim fraud, have the marriage annulled, posthumously seize the property for his mining operation. And if he revealed her true identity publicly, even if she kept the land, she'd never have peace. The questions would never stop. The judgment would be relentless. She had two choices: run again or stand and face what was coming. Kate went to the barn, opened the trunk, removed the gun. This time her hands didn't shake when she loaded it. This time the weight felt familiar, almost comforting. Not because she planned violence, because she needed to remember who she'd been before shame bent her spine. Catherine Merrick had been strong once, capable, brave enough to survive when survival seemed impossible. Maybe it was time to remember that. The town hall packed full by the time Kate arrived just before 7. Every seat taken, people standing along the walls, children sitting cross-legged on the floor. The whole valley had turned out, drawn by gossip and the promise of drama. Kate walked through the crowd alone. No one met her eyes. Conversations died as she passed, replaced by whispers that followed like smoke. She kept her spine straight, head high, hands steady at her sides. Samuel Hawthorne stood at the front with Mayor Drummond. He'd dressed for the occasion in a fine suit that made every other man look shabby, by comparison. When he saw Kate, he smiled, polite, victorious. Mrs. Morrison, Drummond called. Please come forward. Kate moved to the front, acutely aware of every eye on her. She'd faced Lakota war parties with less trepidation. At least then she'd known who the enemy was. Thank you all for coming, Drummond began. We've called this meeting to address concerns raised by Mr. Hawthorne regarding water rights and property ownership. Mr. Hawthorne, would you like to begin? Thank you, Mayor. Hawthorne's voice carried clearly, practiced, and confident. Good people of Bitterroot Falls, I come before you not to cause trouble but to prevent it. My mining operation represents significant investment in your valley, jobs, prosperity, a future for your children, but to succeed we need reliable water from Blood Creek." He paused, letting that sink in. Kate saw heads nodding. Jobs were scarce, money scarcer still. Hawthorne was offering both. "Mrs. Morrison has refused to sell water rights at any price," he continued. "That's her right, of course. Private property must be respected. But it made me curious. Why would someone turn down a fortune for something she's not using? So I investigated." Kate's jaw tightened. Here it came. "I discovered some troubling facts. Mrs. Morrison arrived in Bitterroot Falls in autumn of 1877. She married Daniel Grave in December of that year under the name Kate Morrison. But there are no records of any Kate Morrison before that date. No birth certificate, no family, nothing. She appeared from nowhere, married a man she barely knew, and inherited his property when he died suspiciously 6 months later." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Kate felt their doubt like a physical weight. Drummond held up a hand for silence. "Those are serious allegations, Mr. Hawthorne. Do you have proof?" "I have questions that deserve answers." Hawthorne turned to Kate. "Who were you before you became Kate Morrison? Where did you come from? And why did Daniel Grave fall from a cliff he'd climbed safely 100 times before?" The room held its breath. Every eye on Kate now waiting. She could lie, could bluster and deny and hope her word carried weight against his insinuations. But she was tired of lying. "My name," Kate said clearly, "was Catherine Merrick. I served in the United States Army as a scout based at Fort Ellis. In May of 1877, my unit was ambushed in Black Paw Canyon. I was the only survivor." Gasps, shocked whispers. Drummond's eyes went wide. Hawthorne's smile grew. "I came here to start over," Kate continued, "to escape the memories of what happened there. I married Daniel Grave because he offered me a home and asked no questions. His death was an accident, a tragic accident. I've mourned him for 6 years." "Mourned him," Hawthorne said softly, "or celebrated inheriting his land. That's enough." A new voice. Jacob Brennan stood pushing through the crowd. "Mr. Hawthorne, you're making accusations without evidence." "I'm stating facts. Catherine Merrick was the only survivor of Black Paw Canyon. 12 soldiers died. She lived. Some called her a hero. Others called her a coward who ran while good men died fighting." The room erupted. Shouts. Arguments. Drummond banging his gavel for order. Through it all, Kate stood silent, letting the storm break around her. She'd known this moment would come, had dreaded it for 16 years. Now it was here, and strangely, she felt almost relieved. When order was restored, Drummond addressed Kate directly. "Mrs. Morrison, or Miss Merrick, is what Mr. Hawthorne said true. Did you survive when your unit perished?" "Yes." "Did you run or did you fight?" Kate met his eyes. "I ran, but not to save myself. The Lakota had captured my sister. 14 years old. They offered a trade. Her life for my unit's. I chose her." The silence now was different, heavier. People processing what that meant. The moral calculus of 12 lives, for one. A woman in the back spoke up. "Your sister was just a child." "So were some of those soldiers," Kate replied. "The youngest was 17. They all had families, people who loved them. I chose blood over duty, and I've paid for it every day since. Not enough." Hawthorne's voice cut like a blade. "You're alive. You have land, freedom, peace. Those men have graves, including my brother." The word hung in the air. Brother. Kate's world tilted. "Thomas Brennan," she whispered. "Your brother." "No." Hawthorne stepped closer. "Samuel Merrick, your fiancé." The room spun. Kate gripped the table edge to stay upright. Impossible. Samuel was dead. She'd mourned him, carried his memory like a stone for 16 years. But the man before her reached up, removed his hat. In the lamplight, she saw it. The scar, the dead eye, the face beneath, older and harder but unmistakable. Samuel, alive. "Hello, Catherine," he said. "I've been waiting a long time for this conversation." Kate couldn't breathe. The room pressed in from all sides, faces blurring, voices distant. Samuel, alive, standing 3 feet away with death in his good eye and her name on his lips. How she managed. The word came out broken. "The Lakota left me breathing, barely. I lost this eye." He gestured to the ruined socket. Nearly lost my leg. Spent 11 days crawling back to Fort Ellis. By the time I arrived, you were gone, listed as killed in action. Except I knew better. I knew you'd run. I went for help. I was trying to save you. You were trying to save Alice. The chief told me everything before he let me go, said you'd traded our lives for hers. Said I should live to remember that my woman loved her sister more than me. The crowd murmured. Kate saw judgment in their faces. Not all of them, but enough. Samuel, please. She took a step toward him. I never stopped loving you, but she was 14, just a child. And what was I? His voice rose raw with 16 years of grief and rage. What were Thomas and Marcus and Daniel? We trusted you. I loved you. And you chose. I know. Tears streamed down Kate's face, now unchecked. I know what I did. I've lived with it every second of every day. I changed my name because I couldn't bear being the person who made that choice. But you still made it. Yes. Samuel laughed bitterly. At least you're honest now. That's something, I suppose. More than you gave me then. Jacob Brennan moved between them. This isn't the place for this, Mr. Hawthorne. Whatever happened 16 years ago, it's personal between you two. It's not personal. Samuel turned to the crowd. It's about character, about who we allow to live among us. This woman traded American soldiers for a savage's hostage. She married a man under false pretenses and inherited property she had no right to. And now she stands in the way of progress because she thinks she deserves to hide from her past. Drummond cleared his throat. Legally speaking, if Mrs. Morrison married Mr. Grave under a false name, the marriage may not be valid, which would affect the inheritance. Exactly, Samuel said. I'm not asking her to be punished for surviving. I'm asking her to surrender property she obtained through fraud so the rest of you can prosper. Kate saw how neatly he'd trapped her. Reveal the truth and lose her land. Keep silent and be driven out anyway. Either way, she lost. I propose a vote, Samuel continued. Does this community want Catherine Merrick to remain, or should she leave and allow development to proceed? That's not fair. Ethan's young voice rang clear. The boy pushed to the front, face flushed with anger. She gave me work when I needed it. Didn't ask questions. Didn't judge. That's more than most of you have done. Sit down, boy, someone muttered. No, sir. Mrs. Morrison made a choice nobody should have to make, but she made it to save a child. If that makes her bad, what does it make all of you for judging her when you've never had to choose like that? Silence. Then a woman stood. The boy's right. War makes monsters of us all. Catherine Merrick survived. That's not a crime. But another man countered. She let soldiers die. My son's in the army. What if someone traded his life away? The debate raged. Kate stood at the center, invisible now, as they argued her fate like she was already gone. She caught Jacob's eye. He looked troubled, conflicted. Did he know? About his brother? Finally, Drummond raised his hand. Enough. Mrs. Morrison, you're free to stay pending a legal review of your property claim. But I'd suggest cooperating with Mr. Hawthorne, for everyone's sake. The meeting dissolved into smaller arguments. Kate moved toward the door, desperate for air. Samuel caught her arm. Catherine, wait. She turned. Up close she could see the years etched into his face, the pain living in the lines around his mouth. What do you want, Samuel? You've destroyed me publicly. Isn't that enough? I want you to answer one question. His voice dropped, meant only for her. Did you ever love me? Or was I just someone convenient to lean on until your sister needed you more? Kate looked at this ghost from her past, this man she'd mourned and loved and lost. I loved you more than my own life. That's why I couldn't let you die, not knowing I tried to save you. But Alice was innocent. You were a soldier. You understood risk. She didn't choose to be taken. You chose to serve. So her life mattered more. So I couldn't choose you over a child. I couldn't Samuel. If you'd been there, if you'd seen her face, you would have made the same choice. We'll never know, will we? He released her arm. Go home, Catherine. Enjoy your ranch while you can, because I will take it from you. I'll take everything until you understand what it feels like to lose what you thought you'd die for. He walked away. Kate stood in the emptying hall, hollowed out, wrung dry. When she finally moved toward the door, Jacob was waiting. Mrs. Morrison, Miss Merrick. Whatever I should call you. He twisted his hat in his hands. I need to know something. My brother Thomas. Was he one of the 12? Kate's heart sank. Yes. Did he suffer? It was quick. I'm told they fought bravely. Jacob nodded slowly. You know what strange Thomas wrote me letters. The last one came a week before he died. He mentioned you. Said you were the best scout he'd ever worked with. Said if anything happened to him, we shouldn't blame you because you'd done everything possible to keep them safe. Tears spilled over again. He was a good man. Yeah, he was. Jacob looked at her with something that might have been understanding. I don't know what I think about what you did. Part of me is angry. Part of me wonders what I would have done in your place. But I know Mr. Hawthorne is using this for his own gain, using my brother's death and your guilt to get rich. That sits wrong with me. Why are you telling me this? Because someone should. He put his hat on. Good night, ma'am. I'm sorry for what happened to you. All of it. He left. Kate stood alone in the town hall, surrounded by empty chairs and the ghosts of accusations. Outside, night had fallen complete. Stars burned cold and distant. She walked to her horse-mounted road home through darkness so thick she had to trust Flint to find the way. The ranch appeared like a memory of safer times, lights in the barn where Ethan waited, the house dark and patient. Kate, dismounted, stood in her yard and let herself feel the full weight of what had happened. Samuel was alive. Her fiancé had survived, had lived 16 years, hating her planning this moment. And now he would take everything. The land, her peace, whatever small redemption she'd built from ruins. Part of her wanted to run again, disappear into the wilderness, and start over somewhere new. But she was tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of carrying shame like a second skeleton. If Samuel wanted war, she'd give him truth instead. All of it, every detail of that terrible day, the choice she'd made, the price she'd paid. Let him judge her then. Let them all judge. She was done apologizing to ghosts. 3 days of relative quiet followed. Kate worked the ranch, Ethan helping despite her protests. The boy had become stubborn, refusing to leave, sleeping in the barn with one of Daniel's old rifles nearby. In case Hawthorne sends men, he'd said. Kate hadn't argued. Part of her welcomed the company, the sense that maybe she wasn't entirely alone. On the 4th day, a wagon came up the road. Kate watched from the porch hand near her gun, but as it drew closer, her heart seized. Alice. Her sister climbed down from the wagon, older but unmistakable. 30 years old now, dressed in a respectable calico dress, 2 small children clinging to her skirts. Behind her, a man who must be her husband helped unload bags. Alice saw Kate and froze. For a long moment they simply stared at each other across years of silence and secrets. Then Alice ran, crossed the yard and threw herself into Kate's arms with the force of their shared history. Kate caught her, held her, breathed in the scent of her sister's hair, and felt something inside her chest crack wide open. "Kate," Alice sobbed, "I came as soon as I heard. The rumors reached Helena. They're saying terrible things about you." "They're true." Kate pulled back, held her sister at arm's length. "Alice, what are you doing here? You should have stayed away." "You're my sister. Did you think I'd abandon you?" Alice wiped tears from her face. "Besides, I need to know. What really happened at Black Paw Canyon? The Army said you died. Said everyone died. But here you are, and Samuel Hawthorne is claiming you let them die. I need to hear it from you." Kate glanced at the children, at Alice's husband, waiting by the wagon. "Not here. Let's walk." They moved toward Blood Creek, leaving the others behind. The water ran shallow over smooth stones, its voice the same as it had been for centuries. Kate stopped at the bank, stared into clear water, and tried to find words for the unspeakable. "You were taken hostage," she began. "Do you remember?" Alice frowned. "Barely. I was so young. I remember being scared, being held in a camp. Then you came and rescued me." "I didn't rescue you, Alice. I traded for you." "What do you mean?" Kate turned to face her sister. "The Lakota chief who took you, he gave me a choice. Your life for my units. 12 soldiers, including Samuel, for one 14-year-old girl. I chose you." The color drained from Alice's face. "No, that's not... You said you went for help." "I did, but too late. By the time the cavalry arrived, they were dead. All of them. Because I ran when I should have stayed and fought. Because of me." Alice's voice went hollow. 11 men died because you chose to save me. You were a child, innocent. They were soldiers. They'd accepted the risks. But 11 lives, Kate. 11 families destroyed. Alice stepped back. All these years you never told me. I've been living my whole life not knowing I was bought with blood. I didn't want you to carry that weight, but you carried it for me. Is that why you disappeared? Why you let me think you were dead? Alice's voice rose sharp with betrayal. I mourned you. I cried myself sick over losing my only family. And all along you were alive, hiding from what you'd done. I couldn't face you, couldn't look at you without seeing their faces. So you made me an orphan to save yourself from guilt. Alice laughed bitterly. That's not love, Kate. That's cowardice. The word hit like a fist. Kate flinched, but didn't argue. You're right. Am I? Because I don't know anymore. I don't know if I should thank you for saving me or hate you for the price you paid. I don't know if I'm grateful or guilty or both. Alice pressed her hands to her face. Those children back there, they're innocent. My husband, he's a good man. We have a life. And now I find out it's built on graves. Alice, please. No, I need time to think about this, to figure out what it means. Alice turned back toward the wagon. We'll stay in town tonight. I'll come back tomorrow. But right now I can't look at you without wondering if I was worth it. If any life is worth 11 others. She walked away. Kate watched her go, watched her sister's shoulders shake with sobs, watched the life she'd saved reject the sacrifice that purchased it. When Alice's wagon disappeared around the bend, Kate sank to her knees by the creek. The water reflected sky clouds, the mountains eternal and uncaring. She looked at her reflection, saw Catherine Merrick staring back. Not Kate Morrison, not anymore. The truth was out, the cost tallied. And still no answer to the question that had haunted 16 years. Had it been worth it? Ethan found her there at dusk, still kneeling by the water. He sat beside her without speaking, just present. After a while, Kate said quietly, My sister doesn't know if she can forgive me. I don't blame her. Maybe forgiveness isn't the point, Ethan offered. Maybe it's just learning to live with what happened. Is that enough? Has to be. It's all we get. They sat in silence as stars emerged. Blood Creek murmured its eternal song. And somewhere in Bitterroot Falls, Samuel Hawthorne smiled, knowing the pieces were falling exactly as he'd planned. Tomorrow would bring more revelations, more pain, more truth. But tonight Kate had this moment. This boy who stayed when leaving made more sense. This creek that would outlast them all. It wasn't much, but it was something. And something after 16 years of nothing felt almost like hope. Dawn broke gray and cold over Bitterroot Valley. Kate stood at her window watching frost melt under reluctant sunlight, thinking about Alice's face twisted with betrayal, about Samuel's dead eye and living hatred, about 16 years of penance that had bought her nothing but more guilt. Ethan appeared from the barn carrying 2 buckets of water, his breath misting white. The boy moved with purpose now, no longer the desperate youth who'd begged for work. Something had hardened in him over the past week. Kate recognized it. The transition from innocence to understanding that the world ran on cruelty as much as kindness. She opened the door as he approached. You should go home, Ethan. Check on your mother. You've been here too long. Ma's fine. Got work at the boarding house doing laundry. My sisters are helping. He set the buckets down, met her eyes. I'm staying, Mrs. Morrison. Whatever's coming, you'll need someone watching your back. I don't want you caught in this. I'm already caught. Been caught since I read that diary. Ethan pulled something from his coat, papers folded and worn. Besides, I found something you need to see. Kate took the papers, unfolded them carefully. Legal documents, land records, a letter written in formal script that made her blood run cold as she read. Where did you get these? Hawthorne's office, or Merrick, whatever he calls himself now. Ethan had the grace to look slightly ashamed. I broke in last night. Figured if he could dig into your past fair's fair to dig into his present. Kate read the documents again, slower this time. A letter from a sheriff in Deer Lodge County, an assayer's report on the gold deposits in Blood Creek, and most damning a contract showing Samuel would receive 40% of the mine's profits if he acquired water rights within 6 months. But it was the sheriff's letter that stopped her heart. Regarding your inquiry about Mr. Daniel Graves' death by accidental fall, the matter has been ruled final. No further investigation will be pursued. As discussed, your generous contribution to the county has been received with gratitude. The widow Morrison should face no legal complications. Kate's hands shook. He paid the sheriff. Samuel paid to cover up Daniel's murder. Looks that way. That fall wasn't an accident. Hawthorne killed your husband to make you vulnerable. Easier to pressure a widow than a married woman with a man to stand by her. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Samuel's arrival hadn't been about justice or revenge or even the water rights. It was about destroying her completely. Taking everything she'd built from the ashes of her old life, making her feel the same helplessness he'd felt bleeding in Black Paw Canyon while she ran. "We have to tell someone," Kate said. "The mayor, the territorial marshal. This is evidence of murder. Who's going to believe us? You're the woman who traded soldiers for her sister. I'm a 15-year-old kid. Hawthorne's got money connections, half the town hoping his mine brings prosperity." Ethan shook his head. "We need more than papers. We need someone they'll listen to." Kate thought of Jacob Brennan, the foreman who'd defended her at the town meeting, whose brother had died because of her choice. A man caught between loyalty to his employer and the memory of Thomas's letters praising Catherine Merrick's courage. "I know someone," she said, "but I don't know if he'll help. Only one way to find out." Kate found Jacob at the mining office reviewing survey maps spread across a makeshift table. He looked up as she entered, surprise, and something else, wariness maybe, crossing his face. "Miss Merrick, I didn't expect to see you here. I need to talk to you. Alone." Jacob glanced around the empty office. "We're alone now. What's this about?" Kate laid the documents on his table. "It's about why Samuel Hawthorne really came to Bitterroot Falls, and what he did to get here." Jacob read slowly, his face darkening with each line. When he finished, he looked up with eyes gone hard. "Where did you get these?" "Does it matter? It matters if you stole them." "Then I stole them, or had them stolen. Either way, they're real." Kate leaned forward. "Jacob, your brother, died in Black Paw Canyon. I've carried that guilt for 16 years, but I didn't kill him through malice. Samuel killed Daniel Grave in cold blood for profit. There's a difference." "Is there?" But his voice lacked conviction. He read the sheriff's letter again. "This doesn't prove murder, just that Hawthorne paid for the investigation to stop. Could be he had other reasons." "You don't believe that?" "No." Jacob sat heavily. "No, I don't. But proving it is another matter. Hawthorne's careful. He wouldn't have left evidence lying around unless he thought it was safe. Which means he thinks he's untouchable, that even if someone found out, they couldn't stop him." Kate straightened. "Are you going to help me, Jacob, or are you going to let him get away with murder because it's easier than fighting?" Jacob met her eyes. In them, Kate saw the same struggle she'd faced 16 years ago. The choice between what was easy and what was right, between self-preservation and justice. "My brother wrote that you were brave," he said quietly, "that you'd face down a grizzly to protect your unit. He admired that, wanted to be like that." Jacob folded the documents carefully. "I'll help, but not for you, for Thomas. He deserves better than having his death used to justify another murder." Relief flooded through Kate. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We still need proof Hawthorne killed Daniel Grave. These documents show motive and cover-up, but not the act itself. Then we find the proof, how the body's been buried 15 years, the sheriff's been paid off. Any witnesses are long gone or bought." Kate thought hard. Daniel had been a solitary man, but he'd had friends, other ranchers, men who knew the country and would have noticed inconsistencies in the story of his death. One name surfaced in her memory. Thomas Carver. He ranched south of here, helped Daniel with spring roundup. If anyone knew the details of that fall, it would be him. Jacob nodded slowly. "Carver sold his place 2 years ago, moved to Missoula, but I can find him. Ask questions. Be careful. If Samuel suspects you're digging, I'll be careful." Jacob tucked the documents inside his coat. "Miss Merrick, can I ask you something?" "Kate. You might as well call me Kate." "Kate, then. That choice you made in Black Paw Canyon. If you could go back knowing everything you know now, would you choose different?" The question Kate had asked herself 10,000 times. She wanted to say yes, wanted to believe she'd sacrifice herself, save the unit, let Alice die, so those 11 men could live. But honesty was all she had left. "I don't know. I want to say I'd choose different, but if I heard Alice screaming, saw her face, knew I could save her. Kate shook her head. I don't know if any of us really know what we do until we're standing in that moment. That's what scares me most, Jacob said, that maybe there are no right choices, just choices we have to live with. He left through the back door. Kate waited a few minutes, then slipped out the front. The street was quiet mid-morning lull before the lunch rush. She'd made it halfway to her horse when a woman's voice stopped her. Mrs. Morrison, we need to talk. Kate turned. A woman stood in the shadow of the general store's awning. Tall, elegant, dressed in expensive traveling clothes that marked her as out of place in Bitterroot Falls. Her face was beautiful in a cold way, like marble carved with precision, but no warmth. I don't believe we've met, Kate said. No, but I know who you are. Everyone knows now, thanks to my husband. The woman stepped into sunlight. I'm Grace Hawthorne, Samuel's wife. The ground tilted. Kate gripped the hitching post to steady herself. His wife. For 8 years. Though I suspect he's never mentioned me to you, he's too busy reliving his tragic lost love. Grace's smile was sharp enough to cut. Walk with me, Catherine. We have things to discuss. Kate wanted to refuse, wanted to mount Flint and ride home, but something in Grace's voice promised answers to questions Kate hadn't known to ask. She nodded. They walked toward the edge of town where buildings gave way to grassland. Grace moved with the confidence of someone used to being obeyed, her skirts swishing with each step. I know what you're thinking, Grace said. Poor Samuel trapped in a marriage to a woman he doesn't love while pining for his lost Catherine. Very romantic, very tragic. I wasn't thinking that. No. Then you're smarter than I gave you credit for. Grace stopped, turned to face her. Samuel doesn't love you, Catherine. He never did. He's obsessed with you, which is different. You represent his failure, his shame, the moment he couldn't control. I don't understand. Of course you don't. You see yourself as the guilty party, the woman who made a terrible choice and deserves punishment. But Samuel sees it differently. To him, you made him weak. Your survival proved he couldn't protect what was his. And men like Samuel can't abide weakness, especially their own. Kate studied Grace more carefully. Behind the polished exterior lay something desperate, angry. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm tired of being second to a ghost. I've spent 8 years competing with a dead woman who turned out not to be dead at all. Do you know what that's like, watching your husband stare into the distance and know he's seeing someone else's face? Then why marry him? Money, security. The usual reasons women marry men they don't love. I thought I could make him forget you, thought devotion and beauty and everything a wife should be would be enough. Grace laughed bitterly. I was wrong, and 3 years ago when he discovered you were alive, I became irrelevant. Grace, I don't want Samuel. I never wanted to hurt you or anyone else. But you did hurt me by existing, by surviving, by giving him something to chase that isn't me. Grace's voice hardened. So I'm going to do what I should have done years ago. I'm going to remove you from his life, permanently. The threat crystallized too late. Grace's hand emerged from her coat pocket, holding a small pistol, the kind ladies carried for protection. Kate had just enough time to see her finger tighten on the trigger before movement exploded from her left. Jacob tackled Grace sideways. The gun-fired bullet whining past Kate's ear, close enough to feel its heat. Grace and Jacob hit the ground hard, struggling. The pistol skittered across dirt. Kate lunged for it. Her fingers closed around cold metal as Grace kicked free of Jacob and ran, not toward town but toward the mining office. Kate stood pistol in hand, heart hammering. Jacob climbed to his feet, breathing hard. Are you hurt? No, thanks to you. Kate stared at the gun. She was going to kill me. Seemed that way. Jacob brushed dirt from his coat. I came back to tell you I'd sent a telegram to Carver, saw you walking with her, and something felt wrong. She's Samuel's wife. I know, I've met her. Didn't trust her then either. Jacob nodded toward the mining office. She went to warn him. We need to move fast. To do what we still don't have proof of murder, just a jealous wife and stolen documents. We have attempted murder, fresh, with witnesses. Jacob smiled grimly. Sometimes you have to wait for people to make mistakes. Grace just made a big one. The confrontation came faster than Kate expected. By sunset, the whole town knew Grace Hawthorne had tried to shoot Catherine Merrick. Mayor Drummond called another meeting, this one urgent and tense. The hall filled quickly. Kate arrived with Jacob at her side, and Ethan trailing behind like a determined shadow. Samuel sat in the front row with Grace beside him, her hands folded primly, face composed. "You'd never know she'd tried to commit murder 6 hours ago," Drummond gavelled for order. "This meeting is called to address allegations of violence. Mrs. Hawthorne, you stand accused of attempting to shoot Miss Merrick. What do you say to this?" "It's a lie." Grace's voice was calm. "I spoke with Miss Merrick this morning about her past. She became agitated, threatened me. I drew my weapon in self-defense. It discharged accidentally when Mr. Brennan attacked me." Murmurs through the crowd. Drummond looked at Kate. "Your version?" "Mrs. Hawthorne lured me away from town and tried to shoot me. Jacob Brennan witnessed it and saved my life." "Is this true, Mr. Brennan?" Jacob stood. "Yes, sir. I saw the whole thing. Mrs. Hawthorne drew first aim deliberately and fired. No accident about it." Samuel rose smoothly. "With respect, Mayor Mr. Brennan is clearly infatuated with Miss Merrick. I've noticed him spending considerable time at her ranch. His testimony is biased." "And your wife's testimony isn't biased," Jacob shot back. "You've been trying to destroy Kate since you arrived, using your wife's jealousy to do your dirty work. Careful, Brennan, you're still my employee." "Not anymore. I quit." The room erupted. Drummond's gavel cracked like gunshots until silence returned. "Enough! This has gone too far. Mr. Hawthorne, I'm going to have to ask you and your wife to leave Bitterroot Falls. Your presence is causing too much disruption." "You can't force us out. I have legal mining claims and property rights." "I can, and I am. This is still a territorial town. I have authority to maintain peace." Drummond's face was steel. "You have 3 days to settle your affairs and go." Samuel's expression didn't change, but something dark moved behind his good eye. "Very well, Mayor. We'll go, but first I have something to share with this community, something they deserve to know about the woman they're defending." He pulled papers from his coat. Kate's heart sank. She knew what was coming. Catherine Merrick didn't just choose her sister over her unit. She made a deal with the Lakota, traded military intelligence for Alice's release, told them where the supply wagons would be. 3 Teamsters died in the ambush that followed. She's not just a coward. She's a traitor. The words hit like a physical blow. Kate couldn't breathe, couldn't think, because it was true. Part of the deal had been information. The Lakota chief had demanded it. She'd refused at first, but then he'd heard Alice, made her scream, and Kate had broken. "That's a lie," Ethan shouted, but Kate raised her hand. "No, it's true." Silence, complete, suffocating. "I gave them information," Kate continued. Her voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "They were going to kill Alice if I didn't, so I told them when the supply wagons would pass. I didn't know Teamsters would die, didn't know they'd attack, but I should have. I traded information for my sister's life, and people died because of it." She looked at the faces around her, shock, disgust, a few showing pity which somehow hurt worse. "I've spent 16 years trying to atone for what I did, changed my name, lived alone, stayed away from everyone because I knew I didn't deserve forgiveness." Samuel's right. "I'm not worth defending." "Yes, you are." Alice stood at the back of the hall. She walked forward slowly, face streaked with tears, her husband and children behind her. "You're worth defending because you saved me, because you've punished yourself more than anyone else could, because you're my sister and I love you. Alice, you said you couldn't forgive me." "I said I needed time." "Well, I've had a day and a night to think about it, to really understand what you chose." Alice's voice broke. "You were 20 years old, I was 14. They were torturing me, Kate. I remember now, the screaming, the pain, and you made it stop. You saved me even though it cost you everything." She turned to face the crowd. "My sister traded her honor for my life, traded her happiness, her future, her peace. She's been in prison for 16 years, trapped by guilt, while I got to live and love and have children. So yes, she's worth defending, because she bought my life and I won't let her sacrifice be for nothing." Kate stared at her sister, at the children clinging to Alice's skirts, at Alice's husband standing protective and proud, all of it purchased with blood and betrayal and choices that still woke Kate screaming. "It doesn't change what I did," Kate whispered. No, but it changes what it means. Alice took her hand. Come home with me. Leave this place. Start over somewhere you're not haunted. Before Kate could answer, Ethan stepped forward. Actually, Mrs. Hawthorne isn't the only one who tried to kill someone. He pulled out the documents, the letter from the sheriff, the land records, laid them on the table where everyone could see. Samuel Hawthorne murdered Daniel Grave 15 years ago, paid the sheriff to cover it up, all so he could steal Kate's land for his mining operation. Chaos erupted. Samuel lunged for the papers, but Jacob blocked him. Grace stood, face gone white. Drummond grabbed the sheriff's letter, read it, his face darkening with each word. "Is this authentic?" he demanded. "Yes." Jacob's voice carried absolute certainty. "I verified it with the Territorial Records Office in Helena. Hawthorne paid Sheriff Matthews $500 to rule Graves' death accidental. There's a witness, too. Thomas Carver. He was helping Grave that day. Saw someone matching Hawthorne's description near the cliff shortly before the fall." Samuel's composure finally cracked. "You can't prove anything. That letter could be forged. Carver's testimony is hearsay. Maybe. But it's enough to reopen the investigation, and this time the territorial marshal will handle it, not some bought sheriff." Drummond stood. "Samuel Hawthorne, you're under arrest for suspicion of murder. Grace Hawthorne for attempted murder. We'll hold you until the marshal arrives." "This is ridiculous," Grace shrieked. "We're being persecuted by a traitor and a child." But two men were already moving to restrain Samuel. He didn't fight. Just looked at Kate with that dead eye and living hate. "Was it worth it, Catherine? All this suffering for a girl who doesn't even know if she's grateful?" Kate looked at Alice, at her sister's children, at the life that had bloomed from the choice that killed her own. "Yes, it was worth it." Samuel laughed. A broken, terrible sound. "Then you're more of a fool than I thought." They took him away. Grace, too, still protesting, still claiming innocence, even as the evidence mounted against her. The hall emptied slowly, people leaving in small groups, whispering, processing. Kate stood with Alice and Jacob and Ethan. 4 people who'd chosen to stand with her when standing alone made more sense. When silence fell, Alice spoke softly. "Come to Helena, please. The children should know their aunt. And you've paid enough." Kate looked at Jacob. He met her eyes with something that might have been hope, might have been more. "I can't leave yet," Kate said. "Not until this is resolved, but after—" She squeezed Alice's hand. "After maybe I'll visit." "I'll hold you to that." Alice hugged her. "I love you, Kate. I always have. Even when I was angry, even when I was confused." "I love you too." Alice gathered her family and left. Ethan mumbled something about checking on his mother and slipped away. Jacob remained. "That was brave," he said. "Admitting what you did. It was necessary. Samuel would have told them anyway. Better it came from me. Still, brave." Jacob moved closer. "Kate, I know this isn't the time, but I need you to know something. What you did in Blackpaw Canyon, it doesn't define you. Not for me." "Jacob, let me finish. I've been thinking about Thomas, about what he wrote. He said you were brave and kind and you did everything you could to keep them safe. He didn't know about the choice you made, but I think if he had, he would have understood, would have forgiven you. How can you know that? Because I forgive you, and I'm his brother. I carry his memory and his love. If I can forgive, he would have too." Tears spilled down Kate's cheeks. "I don't deserve forgiveness." "Maybe not, but you're getting it anyway." Jacob reached out, hesitated, then gently wiped a tear from her face. "You don't have to be alone anymore, Kate, if you don't want to be." Kate looked at this man who'd chosen truth over loyalty, who'd defended her when it cost him everything, who looked at her and saw not a traitor or a coward, but someone worth fighting for. "I don't know how to not be alone," she admitted. "Then maybe we figure it out together." He didn't kiss her, didn't make promises he couldn't keep, just stood close, present, waiting. And Kate, who'd spent 16 years keeping everyone at distance, let herself lean into his warmth. Just a little. Just enough. The trial came 6 weeks later. The territorial marshal had investigated thoroughly, uncovering a trail of bribes and threats that stretched from Bitterroot Falls to Denver. Samuel Hawthorne, it turned out, had built his fortune on schemes and violence, each success making him bolder. Daniel Grave had been his first murder. Grace had known had helped cover it up, hoping loyalty would earn love. Instead, it had earned her a cell beside his. The jury convicted them both. Samuel got 20 years for murder. Grace got 10 for attempted murder and conspiracy. They'd be old when they got out, broken. Kate attended the sentencing, sat in the back of the courtroom and watched Samuel's face as the judge read the verdict. He didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge her presence, just stared straight ahead as they led him away. She'd expected to feel satisfaction, vindication. Instead, she felt empty, tired. 16 years of running and hiding and punishing herself, and what had it bought Samuel in prison? Grace destroyed, Daniel Grave still dead, and herself alive, but uncertain what that meant anymore. Outside the courthouse, Jacob waited. He'd testified his words calm and devastating. Now he stood in autumn sunlight looking at her with questions in his eyes. "It's over," he said. "Is it the legal part, the rest?" He shrugged. "That's up to you." Kate took a breath. The air smelled of coming winter, of change of possibilities she'd forbidden herself to imagine. "I'm going to visit Alice. Stay a few weeks. Get to know my niece and nephew." "That's good." "And then I'm coming back to Bitterroot Falls, to my ranch, to—" She met his eyes. "To see if maybe I can learn to live again, not just exist, actually live." Jacob smiled. "I'd like to help with that, if you'll let me. I'm not easy to be with. I have nightmares. I wake up screaming sometimes. There are days I can't get out of bed because the guilt is too heavy." "I know. But everyone carries something. Maybe we carry it better together." Kate thought about that, about sharing the weight, about letting someone see her at her worst and choosing to stay anyway. It terrified her, but it also felt like hope. "Okay," she said. "Okay." They walked to her horse together. Kate mounted, looked down at him. "Jacob, that thing you said about Thomas forgiving me, did you mean it?" "Every word." "Thank you." She rode toward Alice's house on the edge of town. Behind her, Bitterroot Falls went about its business. The scandal would fade. New stories would replace old. The valley would remember her, but not define her by her worst moment forever. That was something. At Alice's, the children ran to greet her. Kate dismounted and let them grab her hands, pull her toward the house where warmth and family waited. For the first time in 16 years, she let herself belong. 6 months later, spring came to Montana with sudden violence. Snow melted in torrents. Blood Creek ran high and wild. The valley turned green, almost overnight grass pushing through thawed earth like resurrection. Kate stood at her fence line, watching Ethan and Jacob repair winter damage. The boy had become a fixture at the ranch, working after school and weekends, saving money for his sister's education. He'd grown 3 inches, filled out, become less boy and more man. Jacob had moved into the bunkhouse, not the main house. Kate wasn't ready for that yet, but having him close felt right, natural, like something growing rather than forced. They'd talked about marriage, not seriously, just exploring the idea like testing ice, seeing if it would hold weight. Kate wasn't sure. Marriage meant hope, meant believing in a future, meant trusting herself not to destroy another good thing. But she was learning, slowly. That hope didn't require certainty. That future didn't require forgetting past. That loving someone meant risking loss, but the risk was worth it. Alice visited monthly, now children in tow. They'd built tentative bridges across 16 years of silence. Not perfect. Sometimes Alice still looked at Kate and saw the 11 graves. But she also saw her aunt, her sister, the woman who'd chosen her when choosing felt impossible. That counted for something, too. The town had accepted Kate back, mostly. Some still crossed the street when they saw her, but others nodded greetings, invited her to church socials, treated her like a person rather than a scandal. Mayor Drummond had even apologized, said he should have looked deeper into Hawthorne's claims, should have trusted his instincts about the man. Kate had accepted the apology. Forgiveness was getting easier with practice. Jacob finished hammering a post straight and saw her watching. He smiled, walked over, wiping sweat from his forehead. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Everything. Nothing." Kate gestured at the valley. 16 years ago, I came here to hide, to disappear, and now Now you're visible. Yeah, it's terrifying. It's brave. Jacob leaned against the fence beside her. You know what Thomas wrote in his last letter? He said the bravest thing a person can do is keep living after they've seen the worst. Keep trying after they've failed. Keep loving after they've lost. He was a wise man, your brother. He was. I wish you could have known him better. Me too. They stood in comfortable silence. Ethan called something to them, waving. Jacob waved back. The moment stretched peaceful, ordinary. The kind of moment Kate had denied herself for so long, it felt almost foreign. Kate, Jacob said carefully, I've been thinking about what you said, about marriage, about the future. Her heart stuttered. And I think we should stop talking about it and just do it, not because it's logical or safe, because I love you, because I want to spend my life with you, whatever that life looks like. Kate turned to face him, saw nothing but honesty in his eyes, no hidden agenda, no expectation, just love offered freely, asking nothing in return. I'm broken, she said. I'll always be broken. So am I. So is everyone. We're all just broken things trying to fit together. Jacob took her hands. Marry me, Kate. Let me love you. Let yourself be loved. She thought about Samuel in his prison cell consumed by hate, about Grace destroyed by jealousy, about the choice to hold on to pain or let it go. Yes, she said. The word felt like freedom. Yes, I'll marry you. Jacob kissed her, gentle, patient, full of promise. When they pulled apart, Kate was crying. But not from grief this time, from something else, something that felt dangerously like joy. Ethan whooped from across the field. They laughed. Kate wiped her eyes and looked at the ranch, her home, her life, built on graves but growing anyway. That night she went to the monument she'd built on the hillside, 12 markers each carved with a name: Thomas Brennan, Samuel Merrick, 9 others. She visited monthly, left flowers, spoke to them like prayer. I'm getting married, she told them, told Samuel's ghost. To Jacob, Thomas's brother, I hope that's okay. I hope you can forgive me. I'm trying to forgive myself. The wind answered, carrying the smell of pine and creek water. Kate knelt, placed her flowers, and said what she'd said every visit for 6 years. I'm sorry. I'll always be sorry. But I'm also grateful I survived. Grateful Alice lives. Grateful for second chances even when I don't deserve them. She stood, looked at the valley spreading below, at her ranch with its lights burning warm, at Jacob's silhouette in the bunkhouse window, at the future spreading before her like unwritten pages. The past would always be there. The guilt would never fully leave. But maybe that was okay. Maybe carrying it made her more careful with the present, more grateful for the grace she'd been given. Kate walked back down the hill. Flint nickered a greeting from the corral. Jacob opened the bunkhouse door, smiled at her. Ethan was bedded down in the barn loft, safe and fed, and dreaming whatever dreams 15-year-olds dreamed. Tomorrow would bring work, challenges, moments when the weight felt unbearable. But it would also bring this: connection, purpose, love given and received. That was enough. More than enough. Kate Morrison, who had been Catherine Merrick, who had been a girl who made impossible choices, walked into her house and closed the door on the Montana night. Outside, Blood Creek ran eternal. The mountains stood patient. The stars burned cold and bright. And in Bitterroot Falls, life went on. Messy and beautiful and hard and worth it. Always worth it.